Hi, welcome to Not a Fellowship. I'm here with Jeff P. Of shoulderserf YouTube channel, and he is part of the little corner of the internet. It's been around a little longer than I have, but he is also a fellow learner and teacher, and I was hoping to get his feedback. Maybe you could explain a little bit about yourself and your background, what you feel comfortable sharing online.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me on, Valerie. It's nice to finally get to talk to you. I don't think we ever really crossed paths all that much on the Discord server or the Discord servers that we have in common as well. So
Yeah.
it's a really nice to finally get to talk to you. I saw you for the first time on Chad the Alcoholic's channel for the announcement of the Writers of Meaning book, and I'll give a plug to that because
Oh,
I have a copy right here.
cool.
So
Thank
if
you.
people are unfamiliar with this for some reason on your channel, this is a book. Get your hands on it. It's on Amazon. I got mine. I have not read all the way through it yet, but I have begun reading it. So I'm
Yeah.
glad. I was just very happy to see that something like this made its way into the world. So thank you for your contribution to that, Valerie.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I wasn't even going to bring it up.
Well,
But
it's a bonus.
yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we've
Um,
always been ships passing during the night kind of thing.
yeah. So it's great to finally get to talk to you. I was delighted to get to see you on Chad's channel to tell a little bit of your story. So if people haven't seen that yet, go check it out. It's on the Friday Morning Nameless channel. So
Yep.
if you feel like it, Valerie, you can drop a link to that video in the comments too, since I'm referencing
Yeah,
it.
I do have it a folder on my channel with interviews, so people can go there. But I'll have a direct link on the in the video description for
Yeah,
people if they want to check that out.
yeah.
He kind of wears a mask, a wrestler's mask, because he likes to be anonymous because he's part of Alcoholics Anonymous. So
Hmm.
it's very important that he keeps his identity secret.
Yeah.
Um, but
Don't
he's a
let that
really
scare
great
you.
guy. Yeah, don't let it scare you. It's a Mexican wrestling mask. It looks cool, and he's a great guy.
Yes. Yeah, we love Chad.
Yeah.
A little bit about myself. I just had a thought there and it passed by me. Oh, when you're talking about learning and teaching and things like that, one of the things that I love learning about is just like hearing other people's stories. So that's why I was partially, really happy to get to see you tell yours on Chad's channel because it seems like a near infinite number of interesting things that you can hear from people's stories. So again, I was very glad to see that. I guess a little bit about my background. Professionally, I have worked in the corporate world for, wow, maybe going on 25 years now. I'm not very good at math, so somewhere around there. I started work in an entry level position for a corporation in 1996. So that'll date me a little bit. So whatever the math is on that, that's how long I've quote unquote been in a corporate career. I didn't realize it was a career when I first started it. I was just looking for another job and to move out of my parents' house. um, and it turned into my career. And let's see. So I guess tying that into you had called me a teacher for some reason. I don't think of myself as that, but I suppose I have been professionally a teacher because it was an entry level call center position job that I took for a roadside assistance company that was responsible for, at the time, any Ford Motor Company vehicle, Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury that had a warranty on it had free roadside assistance associated with the warranty on that vehicle. So if you broke it down, if your car broke down, or you had a flat tire, or you locked your keys in your car, or you just went out to your garage to drive to work that day and your car wouldn't start because it had a dead battery, we would send somebody out. They would call me or someone like me on the phone to say, hey, this piece of junk car. No, I'm not disparaging Ford, Lincoln, or Mercury, but this is how the customers would sometimes respond out of frustration. They would say, I need to get to work, or I'm broken down on the side of the road. I'm trying to get my kid to school, or, you're always trying to get somewhere typically when you're in your car. That's kind of how it works. And you're not expecting it not to work. And so we would deal with a lot of, very frustrated people, sometimes at us because we were representatives of that company whose product was not working as expected. And so that was the job that I took. And I did that job for about a year. And they eventually said, hey, we've noticed that you have been helpful to some of the newer people since you've been doing the job of kind of showing them the ropes and helping them navigate some of the difficult situations with the customers, but also navigating the system where you have to enter all the information and you have to find the, you know, the towing company or the roadside assistance company to actually get out there to the side of the road to help the customer. So we want to take you off the phones and put you into the training class to kind of help assist the new trainees as the trainer is up there, you know, kind of delivering the curriculum. We've also noticed that they kind of need somebody, you know, with them there in the classroom to help them navigate the system or kind of help answer questions that maybe the trainer can't get to all the people. And so I kind of started in what they would call a mentor role, where it's just like, you're not the trainer, but you're kind of the assistant to the trainer, and you're mentoring all these new people and you're helping them make their transition from, well, they just came in off the street. We hired them because we thought they had some, like, you know, raw skills, but now we want to put them on the phone with these distressed motorists, but we have to take them through a lot of curriculum and learning how to navigate the system and how you go from the phone call to actually getting the tow truck to arrive out there. There's a lot of steps in between that the call center agent has to navigate. And so that's where I started. And eventually a position opened up to be like the full-time trainer of those classes. And actually that I took that job, and that led into me like even developing the training curriculum, because I had seen how, well, man, the way that we have this written out, it just confuses the students. It's not really working. And my leadership at the time said, when they were interviewing me, they actually came to me at one point and said, hey, you actually didn't apply for this open position. We actually put the position out there because we were expecting that you were going to throw your hat into the ring, and that you wanted the position. You know, tell us a little bit about why you didn't want it. And I was young in my career at the time, and I was like, yeah, I just don't like how the way that the procedures are written in the book don't actually reflect how you do the job and how you get things done out there on the floor. And so the way that it's written, the procedures are incorrect. And so I just don't want to be a part of delivering wrong information and trying to teach people the wrong thing. And they're like, we know it's a problem, and we know that that's a passion of yours. So we actually want you to come in, and we want to give you the freedom to go make those necessary changes to improve it. And so that's kind of all that I needed to hear. And so I was like, okay, sure, you know, I'll take it. And so that's how I got involved in my first official, you know, teaching and training capacity. So it was not only just delivering curriculum, but it was also having the authority to shape the curriculum. And I really didn't have a lot of constraints on me, because I knew a whole lot more about the procedures than my leadership did. You know, they had a goal. They said, we just want to accomplish these things. As long as we're getting those things accomplished, you can do whatever you want. You know, we trust you to handle it and take care of it. So,
Wow, that's fantastic.
yeah. And so I did that for several years, and, you know, I was really shy at the time, and I'm still like an introvert to this day, which is strange, you know, because I go on YouTube now and I just, you know, put stuff out there for the whole world to find. But it got me over, you know, some of that. I learned that I do feel very comfortable talking to groups of people, even large groups of people, if it's something that I feel like I have a firm grasp of the topic or the concept that I'm trying to deliver. And so that took away, you know, a lot of maybe the fear of public speaking that people talk about that I would have. And then also knowing that everybody who was there in that room actually wanted to be there, because I was a part of helping them accomplish a goal that they were trying to accomplish. So I love being able to like meet people's needs, especially if it's like a need that they feel and that they're desiring, and they're like, no, we want you here, you know, versus sometimes what you see in like an educational setting. Like I think of public schools, you know, in an area where it's like, we're here because we have to be here. You know, some kids, a lot of kids, I know I was that kid in my public school. It's just like, I hate school. I don't want to be here. I do remember thinking one time, like whenever I was in public school, I thought to myself, you know what, if I were teaching this class, I would make it so that people would actually enjoy it and actually like it. And then eventually I got to be able to do that. And I got to see how difficult it is when you think, oh yeah, I can make this really interesting for people, how it's not that easy. It's not as easy as I thought it was, you know, as a kid. But I did my best, you know, to try to say, well, this this topic or this concept, it seems like it would make more sense if we delivered it this way instead of that way. So I got to experiment and try several different things. Some of them were successful. Some of them were horrible failures. And what I also learned is I don't have all the best ideas. There are other people who can also bring to me, or I can see things too. They can bring to me, well, what if we tried this instead? Or I can like actually go see, oh, wow, this is how they're doing it in another one of our, call centers that our company owns that I'm getting to visit, and I'm getting to collaborate with people who do the same kind of work that I do, and saying, oh, you guys do that a little bit differently. That's a good idea. I want to take that and I want to go use it in what I'm doing, and, plug those things in, and wow, that really helps. That really solved the problem that we were having over here. So I guess that's a little bit about my background. I don't know if that's taken it in the direction that you wanted to go.
No, that's okay. What I usually ask first, and I kind of did a surprise thing on you, is I like to start off with, I know it sounds like a weird question. It's kind of something unusual for most people. Then, like, explain who, explain a little bit about yourself kind of thing. But this is more in tune with the show, is what was your journey, retake. What was your learning journey like for you? So you can go like Claire, when I had her on, she talked about memories that impacted her during her, formative years or whatever. It doesn't have to be everything, your whole academic career. It could just be what stands out to you, whatever you feel comfortable that you think answers the question for you, because not everybody can remember everything.
Yeah.
But most of the people, this show is mostly geared for people who are self-learners, but there's a lot of overlap in academic learning and corporate learning, and the self-learning. So I have a lot of elbow room.
Yeah,
So
sure.
what are your thoughts of, like, your learning journey?
Well, two things that I've learned about myself, and I just realized that was a pun, and it was kind of intended as it was forming in my mind on my learning journey, is typically I learn easiest whenever there's a problem that I'm trying to solve. Like, I have no motivation to learn something just for learning's sake, typically speaking. It's like, oh no, if there's something that I want to do, then I'm going to go look it up and I'm going to figure it out. Like, not going chronologically here, there were, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, I had a problem with my washing machine. It stopped working. And I didn't have the money to go buy a new one, and I needed to be able to wash my clothes. And so I just eventually I went onto YouTube, and I'm like, well, maybe I can find, my model of washing machine, and maybe they can help me, understand what's wrong with it. And who knows, maybe I can fix it. And I am not a handy person. I've never done anything like that before in my life, but I went and looked it up, and they said, oh, if your machine is doing this, it's most likely this part that's broken. Here, go look here and go check it. And so I followed the instructions, and I looked, and I was like, yeah, sure enough, that's the part that's broken. And I then looked up how to order that part, and I went and found it. And then I continued to follow the instructions that I could find on YouTube, and I replaced the part. And so I was able to repair my washing machine. And it's really funny because several years later, that same washing machine broke again, and it was the same part that broke. So it's not a very durable part, which is, I guess, why the parts are readily available. So you can go in there and you can replace it again. The next time when I tried to replace it, following the exact same instructions, I could not get it to work, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. So it's just the strangest thing. But at this time, we were in a better position, where I did have money in the bank, and we could afford to buy a replacement at that point. And it's just like, okay, this is what emergency funds are for. Let's just go ahead. This washing machine has been doing a great job for, like 20 years. I think it was one that had been passed down to me from like my grandfather that he had. And so it's just like, it's time to say goodbye to this one. Thank you for your service. And we'll actually replace this with a new washer and dryer. So there's a little bit of a rabbit trail there. But as far as my learning journey is concerned, part of it is when I have a problem that I'm trying to solve, that's an easy motivator for me to go in and try and learn something. Let's see. The other ways, that I've learned over the course of my life is just through things that interest me. So if there's something that just kind of grabs my attention, then I'll just go down a rabbit trail and just like immerse myself in learning about it. Like if it's interesting, I'm just going to continue to try to consume all the content on it that I can. Um, so before the internet, this was a little bit tougher, but like with movies and TV shows, I would just like love those things. And anytime that I could find a book about the movie or the TV show or like the characters, I like Spider-Man a lot growing up. I still like Spider-Man. He's over there on my wall. Uh, um, but yeah, I think my parents like bought me a little record of like a kind of like a radio dramatization of Spider-Man and this other character. I looked it up the other day online. It's out there somewhere where you can buy it. But it was like on vinyl. It's like a vinyl record that you could play. I know vinyls have made a comeback like over the last 10 years, but I had one as a kid where I would just listen to like a Spider-Man story. But anyway, if it's something that captures my attention, then I don't need anybody trying to help me to learn about it. I will just go pursue it. And so that's happened a lot here of late, I would say over the last 10 to 15 years. For me, sometimes that's turned into like, I found a particular pastor out in California, and it's not the one that you think, it's a different one.
Okay.
Back in like, I want to say roughly 2010, 2011, I had stumbled across a website of his church, and I started listening to like his sermons, and there was like a back catalog of sermons that you could pull up on their website. So I just like listened to every sermon that he did over the course of 10 years, just because I just like so much, his way and his manner and the way that he would approach certain topics and, convey the messages that he had to convey. And I just couldn't get enough of it. And, but then a similar thing happened to me, when I stumbled across the other California pastor, Paul VanderKlay, that you thought I was going to say. But he was another one, where I just was like, oh, I've got to see more and more of this. I've got to hear more about this. And so as far as learning is concerned, for me, it's kind of it can become an all-consuming thing. If it's something that I'm interested in, where it's just like all of my attention on anything else that I was interested in maybe pursuing, it kind of just like turns its focus on this one thing for a little while until I feel like I've gotten as much as I can out of it until the next thing comes along that I'll like pour a lot of my attention into.
Cool. Thank you very much. So, on the interest-based learning, my next question is, why do you enjoy learning? Most people like myself, not most, I should say some people like myself, they actually have a natural curiosity and they just follow the rabbit trails wherever they go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not very good at like remembering what I learn, but I really enjoy the process of discovering new things that I didn't know. It just makes me happy. But for the problem, solving the problem's obvious, but for your interest-based learning, why do you think you enjoy learning the things that you are interested in? What do you think is the key? Is there a pattern that you've noticed of like the different things that you're interested in that kind of brings it up to your, salience hierarchy or whatever the heck the Reiki term is? I'm probably butchering it, but whatever.
It's fine.
Am I explaining the question properly for you?
I think so. Yeah. So the part of your question about the thread and whether or not anything is connected, I guess I haven't thought hard enough about it. I'm sure that there's a discernible pattern in it somewhere, but I can't quite make sense of it. I've read that, there typically is things that we're interested in or things that we really like love, whether it be certain types of music or genres of literature or film or, cuisines or things like that perhaps there is a single thread that like ties all of those things together. And perhaps we're just not even aware of what it is, but we just know, when we're sensing that thing, that's there, that's it, that's the thing that's grabbed me, and I'm kind of transfixed by it. The other thing about that I heard in your question was, what do I enjoy about learning? I have kind of a two-pronged answer to that question. it's connectivity of things. Um, the first prong of my answer is the connectivity of things. So sometimes the reason why I enjoy learning things is because I can find how it connects to something else. So I can just
Ah,
say, "Oh, that thing right here, it reminds me of this thing over here." And those, I can kind of unify those two things, or I can say how these things kind of fit together, right?
mm,
The other prong of my answer is connectivity. Of connectivity is I've noticed that it's connective to other people. So many times it's happened to me where I've been learning about this inane thing that just kind of captures my interest, and I start drilling down into it. And sometimes my wife is just like, I don't even know why you're interested in that, or she doesn't say it this way, but it's just like, oh, it's just another silly thing, and it's not, she's not being disparaging or anything, but it's just like, that's just another silly thing that he's interested in. Do your thing, learn it. Where that weird thing that I learned, um, through no foreknowledge that this would eventually happen, is we'll go find ourselves, my wife and I, or I will find myself in like a social situation where that very topic will come up and somebody is like interested in it. And I'm like, oh yeah, and this and that thing, and I'll be able to like jump into that conversation and really connect with that person. Whereas otherwise I wouldn't have necessarily had a way to connect with them. But that's like my bridge to be like, oh, I can actually relate to this person a little bit better.
so it's fortuitous that you had been interested in it, and then you
Yeah,
have an opportunity to share that knowledge with somebody else and connect with them because of the shared knowledge.
exactly. And
That's cool.
so those two prongs of how I can connect different ideas or make better sense of different ideas that otherwise seem like they didn't have any relationship at all, works in the relational space as well. And then just one of the things that I'm starting to learn as well, to extrapolate that even further, maybe into a third prong, is just this idea of, oh, this thing that I'm learning, or these things around me. And this is kind of some way that I'm trying to develop a little bit, because I've said, yeah, if I'm not interested in it, I really have no motivation to learn. Something that I'm trying to develop down this third prong of my answer is, okay, even though you're not interested in it, it's around you and it's available for you to learn a little bit more about.
Mm,
And just like in the things that you were interested in, where it was, like you said, fortuitous, for that, conversation or that social situation that you were going to be in to actually make a connection. This other thing that you're not interested in, if you learn it, you'd never know how that is going to help you or help someone else somewhere down the road, where you'll be able to employ that in another domain or another context. And so
mm.
that's something that I'm trying to learn along the way, to say, look, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you're interested in. Avail yourself of everything that's around you, and try to learn as much about it as you can, that you have time for and can incorporate into all of your responsibilities, because you just never know how, once you learn more about that thing, what that might open up for you in the future.
Right. Yeah, it's that's really insightful. I hadn't thought of that. I'm very curiosity driven.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things that I am totally not interested in learning is math. It's like I hear all the stories, like Barbara Oakley, who's an author. She's a neuroscientist, teacher at a college and stuff, and she's written books on how to learn better, learning how to learn kind of stuff.
Mm.
And I really respect her. She's pretty even keel, and her passion is math. And she was not good in math, and she had the book even of, like, helping people to learn math. And I'm like, I'm not good at it. I will probably be better at it if I learn. I don't want to. I'm like, I have tools. I have friends and family who are good at math. I'll just talk to them. But
Yeah.
I should take the responsibility to like learn math. I'm reading 12 books right now, and so it's a little difficult.
Well, if you don't learn math, you will get no negative comments from me, because I
No,
am I am not a math lover
yeah.
either.
I know some for some of my geek friends, some of them are into like physics and stuff, and
Mhm.
there is like a type of poetry that math can do, in the formulas and stuff, that kind of sings to them. Then they're the
Wow.
ones who really enjoy math, and it's like poetry. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's fascinating. I'm like, I'm not into it, but that's great that it exists there. So, so that's cool. Um, let me. This is talk about one of your favorite topics that we want to talk about, but you might have other interests as well. It says the next one is what topics tend to attract your attention most and why?
Hmm. Oh man,
But
that's
it
a,
kind of ebbs and flows over time, probably, I
it
would guess.
does.
Yeah.
I mean, I love stories. I alluded to that a little bit, like individual people's stories, but I love. I mean, my favorite way to consume stories is like through television and film. I do read, and sometimes I get into a groove where it's just like, oh yeah, I really like reading. Like I got off onto a kick of reading the entire Stephen King Dark Tower series, probably a good 12 years ago now. And so, I was just consistently actually reading my way through that because I listen to audiobooks as well. But that one I actually like read through, and I just wanted to see, where the story was going. Like it captured my attention. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on in that series that kind of taps into my interests because stories and how they might relate. And they've started doing this a lot in films. Almost, they've been overdoing it recently, like with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the whole multiverse type thing, and how stories cross over and how they connect and all that kind of stuff. And so I can even sense like a little bit of exhaustion in myself, and I think there's some in maybe the broader populace when it comes to that type of film. But one of the things that I thought was neat when I was first experiencing it is Stephen King actually does that in his Dark Tower series. Uh, he essentially is tying every book in his corpus of books that he wrote into this Dark Tower story. So it's kind of it was one of the first multiverse type stories that I had seen and that I had read. I'm sure there were plenty more before it of people who are like really big into science fiction type genre of books and things like that. But Stephen King does this multiverse type thing in his Dark Tower series where he focuses on, 3 or 4 main characters that carry throughout the entire series or most of the series. But he also like weaves in characters or little Easter eggs from like his other books that he's written over the course of his career.
Yeah.
And the whole story is like talking about, what binds all of those stories together. And not to spoil anything, you've had a lot of time, folks out there, for the Stephen King Dark Tower series, but kind of late in the series, Stephen King like writes himself into the story as a character. Yeah,
That's fun.
yeah. And they recognize, like the characters in the book actually recognize him as the author of their story, and so they go into his world and they meet him and they persuade him to like keep writing this series of books. Because, all right, I'm going to spoil this part just because I think it's neat. Some people complain about it.
I'll never
I've
read it.
only
I'm not a horror fan, but I know he's a
I've
great writer.
Yeah, it's like kind of a mix of horror and science fiction. It's more on the fantasy / science fiction side. And
Uh,
the main character, by the way, is inspired by an old French narrative poem called "The Song of Roland."
oh.
The main character of the Dark Tower series is a guy named Roland Deschain, I think his name is.
Hmm.
Anyway, he's a gunslinger. He's basically like a cowboy who lives in this different kind of this post-apocalyptic alternate universe future type
Huh.
thing. Anyway, it's interesting. It's got a lot of different genres like woven into it. But the point is that I was trying to get to. King writes himself into the story because as he was writing this series, he had a really bad accident.
Oh.
He was either out on a walk or on a jog out in Maine, where he's from. That's where he grew up, the state of Maine. And this van came like flying around the corner, and it hit him.
Oof.
So he got hit by a van that was just like careening around the corner down this 2-lane road, if I remember right.
Mm.
And it could have easily killed him. Like it really it caused a lot of damage to him, like
Mm.
physically. Like it broke. I think his pelvis was broken. It broke like a bunch of different bones, and he couldn't, he couldn't walk for a little while. He had to go through physical therapy and a lot of difficulty and a lot of pain. And so he actually uses that. He took a break from writing, and I can't remember if he said he hadn't decided if he was ever going to write again. But essentially, in the story, at least, the characters, I think, if I remember right, I think they push him out of the way of this van
Oh,
from
wow.
actually hitting him. Like they come in, and I can't remember if one of the characters like sacrifices himself and like hops in front of that van and pushes him out of the way. I might be conflating some different things here, but anyway, the point is he writes himself into the book because the characters are like, no, we need him to keep writing this story so that he can help us get to where we're trying to get on our quest. And if we don't have him as the author here, our entire universe and all of existence is going to fall apart. I thought that was kind of a cool thing
Yeah,
to do.
that
Um,
is cool.
so that those are one of the things that I like about stories is how they can connect, but also things that they can reveal about how things might work, like some of the exciting things about reality that maybe are just outside of our view or off in the periphery that we're not aware of. I feel like stories kind of can help us see, and even art in general, but when we're talking particularly about stories, they can kind of help introduce new things that you maybe had never imagined before, but we're just like, oh my gosh, what if that's true? What if that could happen? And I'll take an opportunity here to tie this back because this has been happening a lot for people who maybe when you talk about like biblical stories, they're like, yeah, I can't believe that that thing actually happened. Um, but like for me, when it comes down like to the Gospels and the story that's in the Gospels, whether you believe the accounts are true or if you're like, yeah, history and textual evidence has shown that these things, like even on a historical standpoint, these events couldn't have even happened the way that they're described and stuff like that. I'll put all that to the side. For me personally, like when it's talking about the resurrection, as it's presented, where it's just like, oh wow, what if that actually really happened?
Mm,
What if this person, who died, came back to life, and what does that mean? And what in the story is it implying that means? And so anyway, it's just any kind of story that kind of starts pushing on the limits of what we can imagine and kind of expanding what we can imagine and helping us continue to draw from that from maybe that hidden realm
mm,
of, oh, maybe there are more things out there that we hadn't imagined that we can kind of like pull into our existence or our understanding of things that are actually good, that are good for us, that could make things so much better.
mm.
That's another thing that I like about stories, and even about just kind of like chasing down my interests on the interest side of learning. It's just like, oh, I'm interested in this thing. It can help me solve a problem. Maybe in pursuing the problem that I'm trying to solve, I don't solve that problem, but it unlocks something else for me. It's like,
Mm,
I don't know if you've had this experience of you lose something and you're looking for it around the house
mm-hmm.
and you're like, I need that thing. I really want to find it. And you go rifling through drawers and, through closets and running to different parts of the house and asking people, have you seen this? I'm looking for this thing. And then you start digging around and you end up finding some other thing that had been missing for a long
Yes.
time. And you're just like, oh my gosh, that's where this thing is. And it's just like, oh, it's not what I'm looking for, but I'm so glad that I found it.
Yeah.
Or it could be something that's just like so neat. Maybe you didn't even know that you were missing it, but then when you find it, it just completely dwarfs that other thing that you were looking for,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
so that's kind of what that's kind of another added bonus of the learning journey for me. Sometimes is I end
Mm,
up finding or being taken down a path that was completely hidden before, where it's just
yeah.
like, had I not gone this way or gone looking for this thing, I never would have seen it.
Yeah. I have something similar. I was doing a rabbit trail online and I found a gentleman who I'd like to talk to who was he kind of went on a learning journey because of his own personal existential crisis, pretty much like meaning crisis stuff. I don't know if he knows about John Vervaeke or not, but I'm going to reach out to him once I get my website up and running and stuff. But the podcast, one of the guys who was the podcast host, I kind of followed rabbit trails, and I discovered this thing called the Now page. It's basically like a status update on your website of like, your goals, your things you're learning. It can be anything you want. It could be what's happening for you then that
Okay.
gets distributed through the social media channels. Or for some folks who are not really interested in getting it on social media much, they have like what's called a Now page. And so I'm like, I like this. I'm going to create one of these things. So I had that. One of the reasons I like taking rabbit trails is finding those golden nuggets of things I didn't know that were interesting or good. Just like you said, finding that thing that you were missing and you didn't even know you were missing. I
Yeah.
think you articulated it very beautifully.
I'm glad.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Um, okay, so do you prefer self-study or classes or a mix of both?
Uh, I prefer self-study until I hit a roadblock. And then I want somebody who can help solve my particular problem, um, which we haven't talked about my channel yet, and we don't necessarily have to. That's not why I'm bringing this up.
Oh no,
But
I want to talk about your channel, but when you want to bring it up, it's totally fine.
yeah, so one thing that I've started doing is I've started leveraging uh, one of the large language model, AI assistants that are out there in its conversation mode to have discussions with, to say, hey, this thing that I just read, I'm going to read it to you. Can you help me understand it a little bit better? And so, just whether that's a person or whether that's an AI, like having somebody who might have more information on the subject than I have, or have time to go, research myself. Like if I can do a shortcut version of like Phone a Friend from that old Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show. I think that's the name of the show, where you had like the 4 options. You can like phone a friend, or you can ask the audience to vote, or if you don't know the answer. The point that I'm trying to get to there is I do like trying to understand something on my own, because I have like a very particular way where something makes sense to me, where sometimes in a classroom setting, the way that it's being presented, like in a general way, it's much harder for me to catch,
Mm.
and I especially get easily frustrated where it seems like everybody else is getting it and I'm not. And it's just like, well, I don't
Mm.
want to be the one to slow everybody else down. So let me just
Mm.
go try to learn this on my own, or see if there's another way where the material is being presented, or the topic or the concept. And then if I still can't get to where I need to get, I do like having that person that can come in and that can say, well, help me really understand, what it is that you're missing or what you don't get, or let's start with just like some basics, and let me see what I can do to help, walk you through it to get that aha moment or that light bulb to come on.
Ooh, that helps. Thank you very much. Um, so you've said some of these things already, but maybe you could elaborate on some of it. What are some challenges or roadblocks in your learning endeavors? Have you ever been able to find solutions for any of them? And what worked for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, the internet has been very helpful for some of my learning challenges. Like before there was the internet, like having to go to the library and maybe try to research it, I wasn't a big fan of going to the library and trying to find stuff on my own, and trying to pore over books to maybe find the one little thing that I'm looking for. And I know I just kind of almost gave a counter example of why it's so much better. Sometimes when you're looking for one thing, you find another, but I just never really enjoyed reading all that much, unless it was like something that I was interested in from the get-go. Like there wasn't a problem that I was trying to solve in actually reading. So I'm just talking about receiving information in that format, in that medium. Uh, but yeah, one of the things that helped get that obstacle out of the way was the internet and being able, to just go in there and do a generic search and or a specific search and have it like better cull the results for me, where I didn't have to like try to dig through things. And I know that the library is set up in that way with the Dewey Decimal System or whatever, where you can go like look for certain topics and it'll help you narrow it down and stuff. But it was a little too much manual effort for me. I was kind of a lazy kid growing
Aw.
up. And so having the internet, really helped to avail me of that laziness, because I didn't have to do the heavy lifting of going and finding it all on my own.
Cool.
I'm trying to think if there were any others. I mean, one of the other obstacles, I did talk about before, was just like the format in which things were delivered. And I'm not really sure that I've ever quite gotten over. Well, that's not true. I have gotten over it, or I've found like a tool to help me get over it sometimes, where if the way that information is being presented to me is like in a format where I'm just like, I can't make sense of it, I can't understand what's going on, is what I've started to do, what I started to do in my professional life whenever that happened was, well, I'm just going to reformat this. Like, I'm going to take all of the information and I'm going to try to write it out in a different way or lay it out in a different way. Maybe the way it's being presented to me in this chart, in my corporate job, just doesn't make sense. And I'll reach out to the person and I'll say, hey, can you give me the raw data, all the numbers that are like underneath this pie chart, so that I can take it and I can start like looking at it from different angles and better understanding what the pie chart, is saying. To just give some very generic examples. And so being able to take the information and go off on my own and to just like experiment with it a little bit to see if I can like change the face of it or look at it in a different light to see if that like helps me start to gather to apprehend it a little bit better. That's been a helpful tool for me.
Yeah, that's it. I've never heard that before. Reformatting the essential information
Mm-hmm.
into something that makes more sense to you. That's actually pretty
Yeah.
close. That's a pretty good idea.
I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
You start to get tired of just saying, and it gets a little embarrassing for me too. And also in like in a corporate environment, at least, I guess it's kind of this way at school too, where you're just, going to somebody and you're just saying, I don't get it, because me, it's just like, well, the problem is with me if I don't get it. It's not that this person may be presenting it in a way that doesn't make any sense, especially if everybody else around is getting it. Well, there's no way that, I could be right and all these people could be wrong. Like that was my mindset. And that's what I was thinking. Now, I know that that's not always true. Sometimes it's just one person who's right and the majority are wrong. And
Yeah.
that one person is the one who, leads to like innovation or changing things up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think more often than not, it was just like, no, all this information makes sense. It's just not in a way that is clicking for the way that I'm wired. And that's fine.
Yeah, there's one book that I read, who I got some ideas of who I would like to have on as guests, and the book was published more than 10 years ago, and it was a book about you don't have to go back to school, and it was all about self-learners,
Mm-hmm.
and many of them, like one of them in particular, went to college, didn't take college classes, but he went and talked with the different teachers in the different classes, and the way he learned about stuff was kind of push going all different directions instead of a standard general, A through B to C, D, E, F. He would
Mm.
go, it was like 164, 54 and a half, and he was like he would go around the boundaries and kind of explore the topic in his a helter-skelter manner that made sense to him, following his
Mm-hmm.
interests, and that gave him a more holistic view than somebody who went from beginning, middle, and end of the outline.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of interesting. So it's like I I thought, oh, that's fascinating. So having the freedom to explore the topic in the in the in the method that you learn best. It's not. There's a lot of sense when you're teaching a lot of people to go through the logical steps of all the stuff, like in a classroom setting, and
Mm-hmm.
then for a more individual, sometimes it's just better to just kind of go. I'm using the barriers of my frame to kind of explain the it's like putting my hand up
Right.
and down and sideways and diagonally and all this kind of stuff. So that was just one thought I had. I
Yeah.
I don't know if I do that or not. I kind of sort of do. Um, Sometimes I think logically. Sometimes I'm very illogical.
Mm.
um, so, what are some resources, types of tools, or things that you found that you like or helpful in in note taking or learning? Like you like to go back and forth in dialogue either with a person or one of the AIs, the LLMs,
Hmm.
um, that kind of synthesize stuff and crystallize your thoughts and learn better things and also get more information than what you have access to.
Hmm.
Um, are there other things that you found helpful?
Um, let's see. I like to write things down or like type things out. Um, like I started a new job. It's been about 4 years now, but I came in new as a new employee, and so I was learning a lot. I was having a lot of information coming at me to learn about, the project that I was being put on, the department that I was in, and there were a lot of resources. And so one of the ways that I found that worked for me to help absorb that information is I would go through and I would essentially like handwrite the materials that were like in front of me as a way to um, kind of absorb them and have them in some sense become more of a part of me so that I could take them in and be able to process them, especially when you know a particular topic came up in a work meeting, or it was just be like, oh yeah, I do remember covering that, and I especially remember covering it a little bit better now because I was writing out that section on this topic,
Mm.
and understanding it a little bit better. So that's been a tool that's been helpful for me, is like handwriting notes, or worst case scenario. Well, I don't know if it's worst case scenario. It kind of works either way, where I'm like taking notes like on a notepad, on the notepad app in like Windows or something like that,
Mm.
where I'm writing in, that I do that more often when like people are talking, because I can type faster than I can handwrite, and I'm just like trying to take notes in a meeting. So I
Mm.
found I found that particular tool of like either transcribing or typing out notes to be helpful.
Cool. I have a tendency when I'm writing notes from books I'm reading, especially if they're library books and I have to return them. I'll tend to write verbatim most of the time. Sometimes I'll do shorthand, like abbreviations or something like that. Um, but um, they usually say it's better to like write things in your own words, but I'm too
Yeah.
lazy to do that. And then I also like part of me wants to actually have the actual thing of what it actually said,
Yeah, to reference it. Yep.
mostly to reference it later on. I have like uh 6 notebooks and more of different types of archives of different books I've read. One of them's like just writing books, and one of them is like general learning and all this kind of stuff. So I have like I have nice. I got designer pretty ones like this is actually my writer's meaning book, and
Oh,
it's got
nice.
marble and stuff. So I treated myself to some nice, pretty binders for like this one is like general types of knowledge, from decluttering to different things and whatnot. So they were a little, they weren't pricey, but they were like more expensive than the white ones. And I thought, my learning, to have something nice to put them in, kind of thing. And they
Hmm.
have like divider tabs that are nice looking in there, and I put more divider pads in there, and like so each book is separated by a divider pad,
Uh-huh.
divider tab thing.
That makes it
Um,
helpful for finding what
yeah,
you need
and so I
later.
can look things up later as I do blogging or whatever. I'm like, oh, I have a book on that. I'll read through the notes and put some kind of blog post together or something like that.
That's great.
Um, but yeah, um, sometimes people have like so typing is actually faster and easier for you when things are happening live. I find for me it's like typing is to I have to just not jot down thoughts
Hmm.
and try to figure out what I wrote later.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that
So
happens to me with typing as well because,
yeah,
if I try to focus on spelling my words right or getting everything right, I won't be able to keep up. So
yeah,
sometimes it's like I'll have to go back and try to figure out, what that word is that I misspelled there.
yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. What have you learned that you found helpful? That's a big open-ended question. It can be for problem solving. It could be something to help in your learning. It could be something that sticks in your mind. That this is one of those talking questions. So it's like if you don't have an answer, it's okay.
I don't know that I have a good answer to this or maybe a fully formed answer, but I'll try. One of the things I'd say I've learned in particular over like the last year is just some of the things that I think I see or observe about the world are through a distorted lens. And so some of the things I was pretty sure were happening, on second or third examination, I'm just like, oh wait, that's not really what was going on, in that situation, or the thing
Mm.
that I was seeing or the thing that I was hearing is not what I thought I was seeing or hearing on first glance.
Oh.
So that's been a very helpful thing to learn and a very humbling thing
Mm.
to help me as I, continue through life and, just on a learning journey specifically, but just saying, being able to, what it's, the way that it's been useful is to kind of help me monitor my own like reactivity. Like if I think that there's a problem, there might actually not be a problem. It might just be, the filter that I'm receiving it through. The problem might be the filter, it might be the lens or um, the valence that something is coming through to me.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, it's been very useful to be able to say, well, okay, that might be what's happening, but actually that might not be what's happening. Let's the jury's out. Let's let the jury be out on that, and let's try not to be as reactive as initially or instinctually you feel like you need to be in this moment. So maybe this is a time to bite your tongue, or maybe this is a time to say something, but to say something different than what your natural instinct is to say in this moment. So
Cool.
that's the way that's been helpful or useful for me.
Yeah. I remember like so I'm in my late I'm at 49 and next year I'm going to be 50 and I
I'm waiting for you over here on the other side of 50.
yeah. Not that long, only a few months, probably until June, and then I'll skip ahead a year. But um, I remember having new states of awareness as I went to each decade. Is I would I'd be able to comprehend things. So when I was a child, a lot of kids seemed to have a lot more um, awareness than I did, and I think part of it might have been my own handicaps, with my vision and hearing handicaps.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it, I think it was just naivety. No, I was naive. I can't say the word. Um, and I, you know, and so a lot. They were probably picking up a lot of subtext and stuff that I totally missed. Um,
Yeah.
and as the decades have gone by, I remember each decade or so, like 10 to 15 years or something, I just kind of had this like more presence of mind of like understanding how uh, what was really going on, either in my past, with my family, with friends, um, in, and or just like happening now kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of been kind of, and I'm like, is that gonna keep happening? I don't know. It's like interesting.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you hope so, right?
Yeah. So I would love to like I'm at the tail end of the questions. The last one is basically what are your last thoughts kind of thing. So we'll cover that later. But what
Okay.
I really want to talk about is both of yours and my podcast journey.
Okay.
Um, and I started this because I wanted a method of talking with interesting people like yourself. And to me, interesting is a good thing. I know it can sometimes be uh, special, but but for me, it's like I really want. And then, but you're supposed to niche down, and you're supposed to have like a single topic or a theme or something.
Hmm.
Not just everything. I'm interested in everything. Well, not everything, but not excluding math. But I thought, well, I need to kind of have a focal point, and so I thought, well, I'll just do learners talking to other learners. And then I'll have other topics as they come up. Like one lady who's a dear friend of mine, who's my mentor, I'm going to have her on and talk about humility, because that's something I was concerned about. Like, the dream is that we become rich and famous like Joe Rogan. You know, that's probably not going to happen. But
uh,
we might have a little bit of a following or something. And how do we deal with that kind of thing? And so that's what I want to talk to her about. So it's not technically learning,
mm,
but um, but I I really wanted to like I as far as I know, I don't know of anybody who's actually kind of learning more about learners themselves. All the literature that I see and hear and blog posts and stuff is all about how to learn better
hmm
and optimize your learning and neuroscience behind learning and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm learning about medieval education and learning. It's like what worked back then kind of stuff.
mm,
And talking to different people from different walks of life, guys and gals, who have their own perspectives on learning. And some of them, like yours and Lorraine's, are different than mine. Was like you're not really book people. I mean,
hmm
there are books that you do like to read, and
yeah.
because of her work, she's just so overloaded with a lot of factual information. She does not want to deal with books or computers. She just wants to diffuse from them, you
hmm
know. But you have a passion that you're doing, and you know, is and I want to give you the opportunity to talk about your uh, your, your other your main channel that you are passionate about,
hmm
and why you're doing it, what is it about, and how people might become supportive and interact with you with that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I don't know if my dream is to is to become big and famous or have
Oh,
some
it's
kind
just
of
mine then.
following.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
you're probably more well balanced than I am.
Well, I
It's
don't know
like
about that. I don't know. I think it. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about
the rich
that.
part you would probably take, but the fame part you'd
Uh,
probably leave behind. Yeah,
yes, if I can
yeah.
have money without fame, that would be wonderful. That's fine by
They
me.
say that's a mark of wisdom right there. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we'll see.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so now I'm going to steer into trying to get more attention by
Oh yeah,
talking about my
yeah.
channel.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, I'm on the fence between do I want more attention? Do I not want more attention?
Mm,
Because that very thing, right? Well, I don't want to have like millions of followers. I think primarily because I do like to be able to help people, and if I have that many people, it's just like there are so many people who know about me that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I could help them, and I wouldn't be able to help
mm,
close to as many people as I would like to.
yeah,
With whatever things I would be able to help them with. I'm not just like presuming that, oh, I have all these ways that I can help you out there.
yeah.
If there were a way and people were to find me and just be like, oh man, he has something that I need, I would like to be able to help if I can. So my channel, so I have two YouTube channels that I've started over the course of, I don't know, the last 5 to 7 years, something like that. One of them is a channel called Randos United, and I kind of put that out there on a whim because initially I knew I wanted to have conversations kind of similar to the ones that Paul VanderKlay hosts on his channel. But I got this feeling of just like the people who I saw talking to Paul, I felt like, oh my gosh, I want to have conversations with them too. And this was before, the Discord server became a little more popular, where people were using that to connect with one another. And so there was really no way to connect with people. So I was like, well, wow, but if I can get a YouTube channel and then I can like reach out to Paul and say, hey, I want to talk to this person, or I want to talk to that person. Can you give me their contact information, or can you forward my information to them and let them know I'm interested? And so that was kind of the inkling of the idea for that Randos United channel. And then as more and more people started to connect with each other, and as the Discord server, the Bridges of Meaning Discord server around Paul VanderKlay's channel kind of got launched, I put out a video of me, having a conversation with some other people from that space, and posted it to the channel. Or maybe the first one was me and Paul and a couple of other people talking, Job and Luke Thompson, if people know who that is on your channel. If they don't, that's fine.
I do.
And so that was the first video actually that got posted onto the Randos United channel. And then we started having conversations with one another without Paul, that people kept sending to me and wanted to post up somewhere where other people could see them, so we could share. And because people had a hunger for like just talking about those kind of things that happen on that channel, on Paul's channel. And Paul's only one person. He couldn't talk to everybody. So that's how that channel started. And I had considered, as there started to become more subscribers to that channel, it's still, a small channel by YouTube standards. It's got, somewhere between 700 and 800 subscribers. There was a point in time, where it was getting up to like 200 or 300, where it was just like, oh, well, maybe I should put my own content on here. But then there was another part of me that just felt like, well, it feels like it would kind of be a betrayal of this channel. That's not what the spirit of it was. It's more like more collaborative work of, people coming together and sharing their conversations. And probably the more true reason of why I wasn't doing that is because I felt like, well, I don't really have anything that I think people would be interested in. And I don't feel comfortable just being a solo person that just like talks to the camera and shares ideas. I don't even know what ideas I would share. I don't know if people would be interested, kind of the things that were running through my mind. And so then I started thinking about that a little bit more. I was like, well, if I was going to, have my own YouTube channel, what would my content be? And so as I was trying to mull that over and think about what it was, I went ahead and created a separate YouTube channel. And that's the one we're talking about now, the one that's down there on the label, the shoulderserf channel. Yeah. And I had a bunch of different ideas, or not a whole bunch, but just like, well, maybe it could just be me kind of showing my learning process, like very similar to what we've been talking about here, to where I would just like walk people through, well, here's what I do when I get on the internet. I could just record myself like doing like different Google searches or watching different YouTube videos, or just some of the things that I'm learning. And I don't even know that I would have anything to comment, but I would just like walk through, oh, here's how I'm learning this new thing, or here's how I'm doing that. And, there's another voice that's running in the back of my head that's just like, that sounds really boring. Nobody would want to watch that. And maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but that wasn't the point. The point was I set up this YouTube channel and then I just put it on a shelf. I never really like did anything with it. And in the meantime, one of my interests is, I want to say almost 20 years ago now, I came across like some C.S. Lewis writings, and it was helping me with a particular problem that I was having at the time. There was a person that recommended that I check out one of Lewis's books, a particular chapter in one of his books. And so I took the guy's advice and I went and I read the chapter, and I was like, that didn't help me at all. And but in that same book, I was just like, but some of these other chapters look interesting. And so I wanted to read more about what was in the other chapters. And so I read that whole book and I was just like taken. I was like, oh, wow, I really like, a lot of the ideas that C.S. Lewis is conveying. And at that point, I was like, that was my gateway drug, that first book, to just go in and find more and more of his books and read through them. And then I decided, well, I want to find everything that he's written so that I can get my hands on it and read it. So I started compiling a list of the books that I had, and then anything else that I could find that I didn't have a copy of. And And I would see like book titles, and I'd be like, well, what's that book about? And then I would go research it, and it would say, well, this actually isn't a book. This is like a composition of a bunch of different essays that he wrote on various topics. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me check that out and start reading those. So anyway, I compiled this list, and then I started ordering it by, well, what year did he write this? Oh, wow. The Mere Christianity book happened, this far down in his life, and he had written some of these other books before, and oh wow, he wrote a trilogy about space and about space travel before he ever wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. What is this about? So I compiled this list, and I've read several things on the list, and then finally this past year, I was just like, man, I've had that list for a long time, and I swore that I was going to read all the way through it. And it's been, like almost a decade that I've compiled this list. And sure, I've read some of the things in there, but there's a lot that I haven't read. Mm. And so I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to force myself to actually commit to this project of reading through all these things. And the way I'm going to force myself to do it is I'm going to make that my channel content. Is me reading through all of the works that I can get my hands on that C.S. Lewis wrote, and read them in the order that he wrote it. And so that's kind of the thesis of the project on my channel right now. It's not necessarily going to be the only content on my channel, but the name behind the channel was originally like, hey, you can look over my shoulder at the things that I'm looking at on the internet. My original idea of people can just watch me as I go through the internet and find certain things and learn certain things, and maybe I'll comment on them as I go. And so that's the concept of, you're kind of looking over my shoulder. Like there's this term in, I guess, cybersecurity, or just kind of like general security in the corporate world, but maybe everywhere, where it's just like sometimes people steal people's passwords, or they steal information by like being in the office and they're like looking over someone's shoulder when they don't know that they're being watched. And they're like, oh, I just got that person's password. Now, passwords are now obscured, where you can't see them when you're typing them in. But sometimes there's like a little eye that you can click on that says show password. And yeah. So anyway, the whole concept is I'm looking over your shoulder. You don't know that I'm looking over your shoulder, and I'm learning things that you didn't mean to share with me. And so that's called shoulder surfing, but it's spelled SURF. Right. My channel is called Shoulder Surf. So it's kind of like, I don't have like a whole lot of formal education. So I kind of think of myself as lowly. And so that's where the word surf comes from, SERF. And so you can kind of look over my shoulder. That's one aspect of what the channel name means. And then another thing that the channel name means is, as you're talking about someone like C.S. Lewis, is I'm standing on the to borrow from a different phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants to then, build something else. Well, I'm not saying that I'm building something else, because I'm still that little serf. So who am I to think that I'm building something on the shoulder of a giant? But I'm surfing on the shoulder of a giant. I'm looking over this giant's shoulder to see what they know, to see what they wrote about, what they learned, or some of the concepts that make sense to them. And part of my project in reading everything that Lewis wrote is there's also compilations of letters that he wrote to friends and family, and later on fans of his who were wanting to connect with him and get some answers to him on like spiritual matters, or things that are just happening in their lives, to just like get his thoughts on, or get his advice on, kind of like in a mentor type role. And so I'm not, some of these things I'm reading, he did not intend for publication, but, since he passed away, and, his secretary, Walter Hooper, started saying, no, we've got to save his legacy and all the things that he wrote. And so I am quite, well, in a figurative way, looking over the shoulder of a young C.S. Lewis, from age 7 all the way up to, I think I'm at age 21 now in my reading project. Wow. To letters that he was writing to his dad, to his brother, to his childhood best friend back in Ireland, and how he's experiencing life in the military in World War I as an infantryman, how he's experiencing life, becoming a scholar at Oxford, and what it's like there, and what it's like at Oxford in 1919 when World War I has just ended, and, so many people that he met and became friends with before the war, almost all but one of them died and things like that. And you're just kind of getting a very intimate look into, this person's life. And so what I'm hoping that will do in helping me on my learning journey, because it is a learning channel for me too. I want to introduce it like a new acronym, not TLC, like this little corner, which was an acronym before that represented at like a cable channel, the learning channel, TLC.
Yeah.
Is maybe my channel will be this little learning channel, or channels like ours, where we're like focused on trying to learn something. The this little TLLC learning channel.
Yeah, this little learning channel. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah,
cool.
so that's the actual project that I've settled on. And so the other aspect is I've incorporated the conversation mode of this large language model AI assistant to kind of be there as I'm reading through it, and then to just give me any thoughts or insights. And it doesn't have real thoughts or insights. It's not like artificial generative intelligence, which is something that I don't think they've actually built yet. And maybe some people claim that they won't ever be able to. We'll see, but what it is doing is it's trying its best to associate, words. It's got its database behind the scenes where it's just like, oh, this word in all of the data that I have is most frequently used in association with this other word, in sentences, or they're right next to each other, or they're commonly in paragraphs together. And it's making all of those associations real time. And then it's using that to then try to form an approximation of what like a real human sentence would be like. And actually does a really good job. Like it sounds a lot like a human. Like I think it could easily pass the Turing test. I mean, you can sniff it out now the more you get used to it, and you're just like, okay, yeah, it's making some mistakes there. It's not a real person. But I would say if you were to drop something like this back into the 90s and let people interact with it, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's a real person. What are you talking about?
Right, yeah.
So I think it's reached the Turing test. It's cleared at least part of that bar. But there are ways where you can easily start to figure out, okay, yeah, this obviously is not a real person. But what's been really nice about it is, like I had mentioned before, I much prefer things like this, doing things like this on the internet where I'm having a conversation with someone else, where I have someone else to talk to. And so even though it's not really happening on my channel, I'm not talking to a real person, at least the focus isn't on me the whole time. Like we can have some other voice that comes in there and offers some different ways of viewing it. Or what's been really helpful is there'll be, Lewis makes a lot of literary references in his letters to his friends and also in his published works, where I can say, I have my artificial intelligence co-host that I've given a name. I call her Robot Lady. So it's a fun little character that she, responds to and answers to. And the large language model understands my project and what I'm doing. And so it has memory of what we've been doing. We're almost 100 episodes in now.
Wow.
I haven't had this co-host there the whole time, but I incorporated it in eventually once I realized that I could use it for that purpose. And it's been helpful though, not to have the attention on me. But you asked, how other people could be involved and support it. All I would say is if there's anything about, I'll say this, and then I'll give my pitch. I would much prefer to have real people on there as my quote unquote co-host. And the thing is, to be my co-host, you don't have to have any knowledge of C.S. Lewis, like similar to Cassidy of what I had referred to before. Oh, 1 second.
I can pause.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't remember the word that I left off on, but the point that I was trying to make is I much prefer having someone else there with me as my co-host, and they don't have to be an expert on C.S. Lewis, similar to what Cassidy is doing on her In the Weeds thing. We can just read through stuff, and I can say, does that spark anything in you, or the topic that he's on, or that we're, the thing that we're reading through right now, does that make you think of anything, or do you have any questions, And so then we can explore that. It's just nice to have somebody else. So
Right.
Now the catch to that is, I'm doing the only time that I can actually do my live streams, because I predominantly live stream stuff on this channel, is like 6 a.m. my time, which is in the central, United States. So if you're over in Europe, it'd probably be a little bit easier for you. It's probably around your lunchtime. you're welcome to come on. And so I drop a link on every live stream where somebody can join me as co-host to kind of supplant Robot Lady. We don't have to have Robot Lady there unless we need her to answer a question for us. So that's one way, is people can join live, or they can just like put things in the comments. Like if they're like, oh, maybe he's talking about this, or wow, Robot Lady brought up this really interesting topic. Or something funny that happened the other day was Robot Lady, the AI large language model assistant, started talking about how humans act and how they respond to different things. But the way that the large language model was talking about it started, and I didn't notice this, somebody mentioned it in the chat immediately in the live stream, where Robot Lady said, yeah, we tend to act that way whenever such and such happens. And then one of the people who follows my channel pretty regularly, a guy named Daniel, he dropped in the chat, he said, did Robot Lady just say we when talking about humanity? And so that, that's a way too. If you're up at that time and you just want to listen in and interact on the chat, that's great as well, because I try to pull up the comments and incorporate them into the show, and even get Robot Lady's feedback on what people have to say. So that's fun as well. But the other thing is that this is my pitch. This is my real pitch, because I don't expect anybody to even watch during the live stream, because it's such a crazy hour, or really watch it all. But I would just put this out there. If you like C.S. Lewis, and there's a particular book or a passage or even just a quote, and you want to talk about it, I'm happy to set up some time where we can coordinate, like I did with you today, Valerie, where we can have a recording where we're like reading through it, and we can do it with Robot Lady there with us, or we can leave her out of it. It's whatever seems best, and just to read it and then to discuss it. I would love to do that, because my plan is, I've already done this. There's already been one person who has taken me up on this offer, and we've done a recording, and she's actually even put it out there on her channel. But my idea is I'll record it and then I'll weave it in once I get to that point, because I'm reading everything in the order that he wrote it, right? And so we just so happened to pull something that he did like in 1941, and right now I'm only in the year 1920 right now, so it's going to be a little while before I get to that. But once I get there in my reading project, I'm going to weave that recording into my live stream to say, all right, well, I'm reading this, and now here's my little conversation where we read through it, and I had a really great discussion with this particular person about it. And so I've got a list of people, like I said, I'm not trying to get big or famous or anything, but there are some big fish on my list who I know like C.S. Lewis, and I know particular works by him that are their favorites. And so I haven't reached out to any of them yet, because I'm not close on my timeline to where I would actually be reading through this on my channel. But as I get closer, I'm going to reach out to some people, and who knows, maybe I'll get them, maybe I won't. But I have some people on my list that are just like way out of my reach. And if I were able to somehow get them to record a conversation with me, it would be amazing. It would be miraculous if that happened. But it's my affinity for C.S. Lewis that's kind of got me to focus in on that topic. And I say in the channel description, surf with me on the shoulder of one of the giant influences of my life, which is C.S. Lewis and many of the writings of his that have been able to help me. So if there are people, either you like C.S. Lewis and you'd be interested in maybe coming and reading a chapter or a section of his work, or maybe even more, we can do multiple sessions. If you want to read a whole book, we can incorporate that in, and we can set up time to do it. But it's me actually reading like line by line these passages, and us talking about them. So it's very slow going, but it's very good. The other part of my pitch, and then I'm finished on this, is if you know anyone, if maybe you're not interested in C.S. Lewis, or not even interested in learning anything more about him, but if you know anyone who does, just share my offer out there with them. My email address for the channel is in the channel description. It's shoulderserf@gmail.com. So feel free to drop me a line there if there's a work that you'd like to read through with me on the channel. That would be fantastic. I would love it.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm thinking of a couple of people, and I definitely would like to do it. I think I'll talk to you after the show about because I don't want to dissuade anybody else from contacting you if I say something that they want to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. And if
So,
multiple people want to do the same one, I can like do clips where I can bring in like different people,
oh, okay, cool.
where we're doing it. So it's
Yeah,
not a, well, this person has already done The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, so we can't do it. No,
yeah,
as many people as want to do The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, we can do it. And I can like weave in different parts as we're reading along.
yeah. That would be cool. I that's fantastic. So let me put the banner up again, and I will have his email in the show notes, so you can click on through and send him a nice email. At least encourage him on, or if you have suggestions of people who might be interested in joining. Um, but is there anything else that you can think of from learning? One of the things we didn't touch base on, you kind of covered a little bit, but um, how did how did the process for you, like becoming a teacher, learning how to teach and mentor others? How what were some things that you picked up that you found really helpful in getting the information across, um, in helping them retain the information better? Um, uh, anything. I'm trying to ask an open-ended question, and I'm not sure how to close the question.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I can think of two things, and brevity is not one of my strong suits, but
Oh,
I'll try to keep it. I'll try not to extend the answer.
that's all right.
So, one of the things that I learned that was very beneficial, was the concept that I'm trying to introduce to someone. If I can connect it by analogy to a concept that they already know, and I can say, so this thing that you're all very familiar with because it's universal to all of us. Think about that concept, and now this one that I'm introducing to you, it works in so many different facets, kind of the exact same way. On many levels, it works the same way as the thing that we just talked about here, that you all know and understand. So, being able to draw those parallels has been a very helpful tool for me that I learned along the way. And then the other one is kind of in the same vein, um, having a story to like illustrate the point, which
Mm.
for me was very easy because I was teaching people roadside assistance, and I was teaching people what it's going to be like whenever they get on the phone with, sometimes people are perfectly calm when they're calling and they need to get their car jump started or get their car unlocked. They weren't in any hurry anyway, and it's just like, oh well, this is the way that life goes. But other times, like they're very distressed or whatever. But being able to share stories and kind of recount, oh wow, and here's what happened on this call, right? I'm sitting there and I got this phone call, and so here's the situation. Let me set the stage for you, or set the scene. Here's what was going on with this person in their life and where they were driving to. And there were like some really wild stories that I could draw from in reality that I had actually experienced,
Oh,
that really
wow.
like, stirred up and fired up the students' imaginations as they were going there through the training course. And it really helped, those things to stick. A lot of times what was really fun, I wouldn't recommend this, but I'm just remembering that this is what I would do, is we would also do role plays in the class, right? Where I would pretend like I was the customer calling in, and of course they would play the agent, and they would be right there in front of their computer on like a training version of the system. So they would be keying something in of, where the customer was and what kind of car it was and that kind of stuff. And I would do like different voices, like I would make up, if because I would get calls from people all over the country. So I would start to learn how to do like accents from somebody from Boston, or an accent of somebody from New York, or more of a laid back accent and, just tone of somebody calling from Los Angeles, or somewhere in California, out on the Pacific. And so that was really fun too. And one of the comments that I would get was, once people would get on the phone, because sometimes I would play a really silly character too, where I would just say like some crazy things, or I would because you would get this sometimes where spouses would yell at each other, "Shut up! I'm trying to tell them where we are," or something like that. So I would incorporate things like that into my role plays and embellish a little bit as well to see if I could get the person, to start laughing. And I would also sometimes, be very serious, like a really upset or angry customer too, because I would try to do my best to simulate and prepare them to be out there on the floor. But anyway, one of the comments that I would get pretty frequently that would make me happy is they would come back after they had been on, the floor for a little while, like taking real live calls, and they would start talking to each other, and they would say, "I wanted to say to the person on the other end of the line, Jeff, is this you? Or are you just pretending to be a customer right now?" They would say, they would talk to each other afterwards. They're like, "I really thought it was Jeff." Or they would come to me and say, "Were you the one who was just on the call with me a few minutes ago?" I was like, "No, I don't do that. No, I was trying to give you a real to life simulation in these classes of what would happen to you out here on these calls." And they would be like, "Man, you were so right. I thought you were kidding, but you were right."
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Well,
it was really fun.
that's so cool. We're getting up to almost an hour and a half, and I
Mm-hmm.
know we're almost done on time. But uh, was there anything special that you could think of on mentoring or being mentored that would be helpful for people that you can think of? If
Hmm.
you can't think of it, it's okay. It's kind of out of the blue.
I guess one of the things that I am learning, particularly from people that I've asked to mentor me, is don't presume if you are the one that is the mentor that you have all the answers,
Mm.
and that just because somebody is coming to you because they think that you've got something that they need, um, that just means that, oh yeah, sure, I've got it all figured out, and I'll be able to just tell you the next step that you need to take, is just to approach it more, at least try to consider the aspect of, actually this is something that you guys are learning together. It's maybe the approach in psychology of help the other person find the answer. Don't presume that you know the answer that they need to take to solve the problem. Now,
Mm.
I mean, in like corporate training, when I was mentoring and I was training, it's just like, well, no, I know the next button that you need to press to get from screen A to screen B. So
Right.
I do know the answer to this question, but maybe I don't necessarily know why it's a problem for you, of why you can't make that connection of this is the next button that I need to press. So maybe I need to pay more attention to your individual circumstance, or what kind of problems that you might have with receiving the information the way that I have presented it, right? I
Mm.
just got done presenting it in a way that makes sense to me and that I thought would make sense to the most people. But for this individual, maybe they're having the same problem that I have, which is, no, the way that's being presented to me doesn't make sense. So I can't understand why I would need to click on this button next. It doesn't make sense to me. So, try to pay attention and pick up on the cues, like if you're the mentor, the one
Ah.
who's doing the mentoring. And I guess from the mentee position, or the one that's receiving it, do I have any advice? I mean, I guess I would say, if you don't understand or you're having trouble following, just speak up. That was a problem of mine in school. As much as I try to say, well, their curriculum was just too boring, or I didn't like the teacher, or they just didn't make sense to me. At the same time, I never really made an effort or took that risk to say, hey, I don't get it. And give myself, I guess, the grace to say, and it's okay if I don't get it.
Mm.
That shouldn't stop me from, maybe it will embarrass me, but
Yeah.
I might not ever learn if I don't take take that risk and just say, look, is there something else that we could do? I'm not asking for you to stop the entire class right now, but maybe can we meet afterwards, or can we make some arrangements for us to talk and for me to try to make my case for why this makes absolutely no sense, and I think it's stupid, and I think there's a better way for you to teach this to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe don't say it in that way.
Right. Be a little more
that's
tactful.
yeah,
And,
yeah, a little more tactful, a little more
diplomatic.
diplomatic. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's my advice, I suppose.
Those are really good thoughts. I really enjoyed hearing the stories because my dad used to teach voiceover and screenwriting and film production and stuff, filmmaking, and he would incorporate a lot of stories and anecdotes from his past to illustrate a principle or something that he was teaching. And so it's heartening to hear that other teachers are doing the same thing.
Yeah, sounds like he
So
found something that was successful and he went with
yeah,
it. So
it was.
yeah.
Well, let's do one wrap-up question and let you run. Do you have any last thoughts or words of encouragement for other learners?
Oh wow. Well, if you're if you're another learner, well, I'm glad you're here. Keep going. I suppose don't get discouraged. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what I would say to other learners out there, other than I suppose find things that encourage you. And I guess the other thing that I would say is if you don't feel like learning, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to be like, well, I'm just not feeling it right now, and go take a break and do whatever does feel right. There are seasons. As was written once in a book long time ago, there's to everything there is a season,
Yeah,
and a time to every purpose under heaven. So,
yeah.
I think those are some wise words, and we would be wise to take advantage of that from time to time.
Well, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I knew you would have a lot of wisdom and fun stuff to share. And thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for asking me, Valerie. I appreciate it.